In case studies, 70% of patients on Lizzo no longer cared how much they weighed.
So, South Park made an episode about fat people.
Oh, let's go! That's class!
And the only person that got unfairly roasted was this unbelievably gorgeous musical genius. Yes, Matt and Trey actually did it. Twice. But did they do it well? I'll get to the end of Obesity special and its many problems soon. But first, let's look at one of the good South Park episodes on obesity. Now this was a season 4 banger called Fat Camp. Now if you haven't seen it, Fat Camp starts with Cartman skipping school because he's very sick. But don't worry, he's still healthy enough to make sure that his mom is miserable. During the commercial break, Cartman finds himself pretty hungry, so he makes himself a chocolate toaster pastry. And in South Park, this is 2 Pop Toasties, which is pretty much the in-universe stand-in for Pop-Tarts. In between the Pop-Tarts is an entire stick of butter, right? A stick of butter that's been rolled around in chocolate. Now this sandwich is what the film school graduates and anybody else that has a brain calls a subtle commentary on just how disgustingly delicious unhealthy foods tend to be. This kind of subtlety is entirely absent from the end of Obesity special. Like I said before, we're gonna be covering that, but let's go back to Fat Camp right now. When Cartman returns from the kitchen, he sees that his mom pretty much has the Avengers assembled, and they start having an intervention about his weight. Now, if having an intervention for someone just because they're fat is unbelievable to you, it's because it is. In America, we really only hold interventions if someone's an alcoholic, a drug addict, and, any countries that have oil. The rest just have to suck it up and just accept that nobody cares. But Fat Camp didn't come out yesterday. It aired back in 2000, back when nobody was on TikTok yet. The coolest phone in the world was a Nokia 3310, and the saddest thing of all, corporations hadn't figured out that there was a ton of money in pandering to fat people with body positivity ads. Cartman doesn't take this intervention well at all. He just explains that he's not fat, just big boned.
Oh, sweetie, those were all lies. You're just fat.
Eventually, a sulky Cartman gets sent off to Fat Camp. This sulkiness is just another subtle commentary. A lot of overweight people are actually, quite comfortable with their weight.
I'm dead sexy!
But societal pressure forces them to lose it anyways.
You're fat! You are fat!
Stop eating! That's why you're fat!
You're fat!
This pressure just adds on to the weight loss process and just makes it even more miserable. Now, miserable is the operative word here. These kids are miserable. They exercise hard and they eat healthy stuff like a soybean pudding for dessert. Blech. Yuck. Now, fat camps don't usually work, and the reason why they don't usually work is because it's such a big shock to your system. You can't just switch from Big Macs and Coke with a side of deep-fried ice cream to salads overnight. First off, the cravings will absolutely kill you and just cause you to binge eat the foods you were avoiding all along. The most sustainable approach to long-term health is to introduce healthy foods into your diet gradually. When people have these drastic diet changes, the intense cravings cause them to quit the diet. This then tells them that a healthy diet is just absolutely impossible to sustain. So they quit and probably being unhealthier than before. Now the same can be said for exercise. You can't just get up and run a marathon or bench press a car after years of being a couch potato. Your body is just gonna be fighting you every single step of the way. That's why it needs to be ramped up slowly. Your body needs to adjust. It needs to get used to the motions and the actions you're now doing. If you can't stick to your diet or to your exercise routine forever, then chances are it's a bad one and you need to find something else. The only reason fat camps manage to sustain such a drastic change in exercise is usually because the people are trapped there. They're not leaving the camp, they're staying right there in the camp. It's a very controlled environment. Now, if you're just trying this at home, there is absolutely nothing stopping you from quitting. No one is going to be overseeing your routine. You're being held accountable to yourself. This drastic change of lifestyle at Fat Camp is portrayed masterfully by the crew at South Park. Going from Pop-Tarts with chocolate rolled butter overnight to a soybean pudding is not a transition that anybody can handle. This makes the kids want to run away. They end up running away in the episode, by the way. But they get tricked by an ice cream truck that passes by. They get trapped by the ice cream truck. They get recaptured because it was people from the camp.
They tricked us again, huh?
And they get driven right back to the camp. So at this point, there really is no escaping the fat camp. Or is there? Continuing on in the episode, Cartman makes miraculous progress. He's down 40 pounds and they let him go home. His mother throws a party for the new Eric Cartman.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you the new Eric Cartman.
Hey, dude! Whoa, I don't believe it.
He's trim, smiling, and somehow not a psychopath. Is this going to be a problem? Yes. Yes, it absolutely will be. At lunch, while the other boys have Chef distracted, Cartman is seen sneaking into the pantry and stealing donuts and candy and chocolate and everything else you're not really supposed to be eating when you just lost 40 pounds. So does this mean Cartman has really changed? Was it all just an act? Let's keep watching the episode. At night, Cartman cycles all the way to Fat Camp and he gives his junk food to... Cartman? Yeah, Cartman has not changed at all. The skinny Cartman is just a kid from a drug rehab center next door. He wears Fat Cartman's hat and pretends to be him. Well, Fat Cartman is still stuck in Fat Camp, absolutely fatter than ever. What Cartman did here was he started a business. He sells the candy and the junk food to the other fat kids at night. Then they cry and they feel guilty about it, but they just keep buying. This is another win for South Park. A subtle and masterful dig at how Big Food uses manipulative marketing tactics to sell us crap that just makes us fat and sick.
Mr. Candy Bar likes you just the way you are. There you go. That'll just be $4.
While Cartman is making bank with keeping everybody fat, the camp counselors are starting to get worried. These kids aren't losing any weight. The worry is then compounded with one of the fat parents come for him. The parents, who, by the way, are also fat, blame their kids' fatness on genetics and they call the camp a scam. They also tell all the other parents to come and get their kids. As all the kids are saying their goodbyes and crying over failing Fat Camp, they grow one of those horrible things that Hollywood actresses grow after they turn 42, a conscience. The kids confess, the camp counselors did everything they could to help them lose weight, but Cartman did everything he could to get them to gain it all back. Cartman makes a big speech about how they can do it all together and how he's changed, and luckily, nobody buys it. I mean, I would never believe anything Cartman ever has to say.
We all try together, but we really can lose the weight.
Oh no, not you. You're not welcome here anymore.
Yeah. What?
The other kids go back to Fat Camp and they kick Cartman out, which I think is a great call by the counselors and everyone who is there. So is Cartman doomed to be fat forever? I guess we'll see. At this point, the Fat Camp episode wraps up. There is one big downside of Fat Camps that isn't explored in this exact episode, but we'll get to it. Matt and Trey also failed to address this exact same downside in the end of the Obesity special, which they released 24 years later. Overall, the conclusion of Fat Camp is that if you eat less and move more, you will shed extra pounds. I know you've all heard it before. Say it with me. Does this advice work? No. Eat less, move more is a simple and theoretically good advice, but it's impossible to follow because it requires a superpower that most people nowadays just simply don't have: willpower. By some quirk of human biology, the bad decision is always the easiest one. Scrolling on TikTok is a lot easier than going to the gym. Eating cupcakes is a lot easier than eating carrots, and wasting all your money 20 minutes after getting paid is easier than spending it wisely. I think I've heard this before. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. Huh. Now, humans generally suck at anything that requires delayed gratification. Junk food companies know this, and that's why they engineer their food to be as tasty as possible, while also using marketing tactics that appeal to our instincts for instant gratification. Did you know, for example, that seeing red and yellow increase your appetite? And just by coincidence, of course, there's no other reason why, but red and yellow is also the most popular food combination in fast food branding. This is why the eat less, move more fails. Most of us simply don't have the willpower to follow that otherwise simple advice. It's not just our weakness, though. Part of it has to do with hormones, metabolic rates, and our relationship to food. This is where weight loss drugs come in. Theoretically, they completely eliminate willpower as a variable, but theory and practice are entirely different things. Now this brings us to the most recent South Park special, The End of Obesity. While Fat Camp was a clever and subtle satire, The End of Obesity is less subtle than a kick to the nuts. The whole thing could have easily been mistaken for a 50-minute Ozempic ad. Thankfully, Matt and Trey hid this special in the one hiding space that no one can find it, Paramount Plus. Now, let's get into it. The special starts with a doctor taking Cartman's vitals, and it's bad. I mean, real bad. He tells Cartman that he's gonna have to make some changes. Cartman's mom says that they've tried the diet and the exercise, but they just don't work. Huh. I wonder why.
Oh, God, yes!
The doctor says there is a solution, a drug that can help Cartman lose weight easily, Ozempic. But it costs $1,200 a month, which Cartman's mom can't afford. So the doctor prescribes a drug that it costs 90% less. Lizzo. As Cartman puts it,
Rich people get Ozempic, poor people get body positivity.
this is the standout quote from the entire special. It is truly profound. It is also profoundly wrong. Ozempic was first approved to treat type 2 diabetes back in December of 2017, which I mean, it's pretty much 2018. Ozempic's weight loss properties are a surprising side effect. The FDA approval to prescribe Ozempic for weight loss didn't come until 4 years later in 2021. It took another year before Ozempic began trending in 2022. That's when, like, the rest of us started to hear about it after it came out and, everybody in Hollywood was using it. Body positivity has been around for a lot longer than that. Like, I remember back in the day, Republicans complaining about Democrats promoting body positivity while they were simultaneously body shaming Donald Trump for his weight. The size of his hands and the size of another organ that hand size correlates to. But, this is back in 2016, 2 years before Ozempic even existed. There are a lot of conspiracies happening right now, especially around diet and health. We don't need South Park making up fake ones. I may not know anything about being rich or the rich at all, but, I like to believe that they're not going to inject unproven drugs into their bodies. They're far more likely to use us peasants as guinea pigs first. All right, let's reel it back in. Back to South Park. Cartman is distraught at not being able to afford Ozempic. Insurance will pay for Ozempic to treat diabetes, but it won't pay it for the weight loss. Sharon Marsh faces the same problem. She can't afford Ozempic for weight management, but once she screws up her health enough to develop diabetes, the insurance company happily pays for her Ozempic. This is because, according to insurance companies, obesity is not a disease. I don't want to wade into a debate on whether obesity is a disease or not, but I would like to prove some real-life context here. Insurance companies were offering full coverage for weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Mounjaro until, mid to late 2023, but then something changed. Approximately 6% of American adults have tried weight loss drugs. That's 15.5 million people. At $1,200 per person, that is a bill of $18 billion every single month. So, to the insurance companies, this is clearly not about medical definitions, it's about the money. If too many people get cancer and make insurance claims, the insurance companies will probably decide that cancer is not a disease either. Nevertheless, Cartman's friends, led by Kyle, decided to fight the system anyway. They're determined to get Cartman's insurance coverage for his drugs. But on the opposite end is an insurance company that is so determined to stop them that the boys keep getting bounced between doctors, specialist hospitals, and the insurance company back and forth until they just get lost in the maze and give up.
Hey, fellas, I think I'm lost in the American healthcare system.
This is one of the better parts of the special. The boys decide to order semaglutide from a factory in India and just make their own weight loss drug for Cartman.
You can order raw semaglutide from a factory in India.
Little side note, semaglutide is an active ingredient in Ozempic. It is kind of like how flour is an active ingredient in bread. You got the water, the salt, the sugar, the yeast, all of which, play a small part in creating the final product. But flour is the main character. Drugs work the same way. There are a bunch of ingredients in these weight loss drugs. Semaglutide is the overall superstar. So the boys order semaglutide from India, cook up a batch of homemade Ozempic, and stick it into Cartman. Cartman tests the efficiency of the drug by eating an utterly disgusting cereal bomb.
Give me Cocoa Puffs, Captain Crunch, and a bucket of KFC. Hurry!
He eats on the toilet to make room for more food while he eats. Just when you were beginning to feel sorry for him, Cartman is unable to finish his cereal bomb, proving that the homemade Ozempic works.
I think these drugs totally work!
This gives the boys a bright idea. What if they could make the same drug for other people who need weight loss medicine but can't afford it?
We're gonna help everyone in America.
That's how South Park Compounding Pharmacy is born. It's a smash hit. The boys are in business. Before you get a bright idea and copy this yourself, compounding patented drugs is illegal. The FDA only approves compounding in the event of a shortage. If you compound their drug at any other time, Big Pharma will be sure to sue you into another universe. This brings us to the side plots, and there are two of them. The first follows Randy, and I promise this will all be relevant later, so just bear with me. Randy's daughter wears a crop top to school, so at pickup time, Randy wears a crop top to troll her. The troll works, but then an Ozempic mom mistakes Randy for one of them. This is a cabal of middle-aged women in South Park who are just crazy about Ozempic, but lie about using it. These women aren't even fat. They're very slim, but take Ozempic to shed an extra pound here or there. They're so obsessed with their bodies that they can't resist the urge to show them off. So they wear crop tops all the time. When Randy wears a crop top to troll his daughter, one of these women assumes he's one of them and invites him to the club. Now this is a complete dig at the self-obsessed Hollywood crowd that brought up the entire supply of drug that they didn't need, which triggered an Ozempic shortage and hurt actual diabetics.
Those of us that can afford it have nothing to be ashamed of, right?
It's clever satire, but sadly it's the only one in this special. When the Ozempic moms run out of drugs, they start robbing pharmacies, including the South Park compounding pharmacy, which is run by the boys. When the clients the boys have lined up miss their weekly shots, they consider going back on Lizzo.
No, don't take the Lizzo. We'll have a new supply shortly, okay?
Is there any way out? Yes. The boys can order another batch of semaglutide from India and compound the drugs, until another player immediately enters the game and complicates everything. Big sugar. Now, it's obvious why cereal mascots don't like the weight loss drugs. When you sell junk food that people have to constantly eat just to feel okay, a drug that makes people want to eat less is just plain old bad for business. So the cereal mascots visit the factory in India, massacre everybody, and then set it on fire as if massacring everyone just wasn't enough. Cartman gives up, but not Kyle. Kyle has just found a semaglutide supplier in North Carolina and just bought a whole truckload of the chemical. The delivery, however, was swamped with problems. This is because Randy and the Ozempic moms hijack the semaglutide truck. Then, while the Ozempic moms are beating up the driver, Randy just drives off with the truck. The angry moms follow him, shooting him indiscriminately, but Randy doesn't steal the drugs for himself. He's been having a crisis of conscience. This crisis of conscience is intimately tied to how the weight loss drugs work. Ozempic, Mounjaro, and their other clones work on two fronts. One, they slow down digestion, which keeps food in your stomach for longer. And two, they suppress cravings. That's why people lose weight so fast on Ozempic. They just don't eat. Semaglutide, like we mentioned before, is the active ingredient in Ozempic, and it mimics the natural hormone called GLP-1. GLP-1 is the hormone that regulates cravings. Cravings are what makes dieting so difficult. You see the cupcake and you just want to eat it, but you can't, but oh my god, it looks so good, but it's so bad, but it's so good, okay, but I just have the one little bite, it just can't hurt. And that's how you end up eating a box of cupcakes every night and failing your diet. But with Ozempic, your GLP-1 levels are so elevated that even if you see the yummiest cupcake in the world, you just don't care. Your cravings are gone and your stomach is still full from the last time you ate because your digestion is now so slow. The problem with it, of course, is that Ozempic doesn't just suppress food cravings. It suppresses cravings for everything else, good or bad. It's like the ultimate anti-desire drug that changes your entire personality. We see this with Randy. He's being completely disinterested with food or anything else than Ozempic. Reduced cravings don't just apply to food. People on Ozempic want everything less, be it food, drugs, sex, alcohol, or plain old companionship. This dampening of desire is what causes one of the most common side effects of Ozempic, depression. We are ultimately defined by what we crave the most. Be it food, fame, or a kiss from your crush. What we crave is what we pursue, and when a drug destroys those cravings, you don't want to pursue those things. This makes life feel a little pointless. That's why Ozempic users get depressed. I made a video on that. If you're interested in knowing what depression feels like and how it's portrayed in South Park, you can watch it after this one if you like. I'll tag the video. That's on top of the other side effects like constipation, vomiting, diarrhea, smelly burps, and having food sit in your stomach for so long that it starts to rot, which, by the way, that can cause paralysis. Now, the stomach paralysis thing is exceedingly rare, but the other side effects are far more common. I'd also like to add that these side effects are all temporary and tolerable. Now, the drug wears off after about a week, unless you get a second injection and so on, but they will go away, except Ozempic face and Ozempic butt. Those pictures are permanent. It would have been funnier and more relatable if the end of Obesity special showed how Ozempic makes your breath smell like rotten eggs because of all the food fermenting in your stomach. This affects about 10% of users. Nausea and vomiting affect 36%, while diarrhea affects another 8%. Other side effects like coldness, abdominal pain, constipation, and indigestion affect smaller percentages. But overall, 75% of Ozempic users experience at least one of these side effects. But Matt and Trey have a massive blind spot here. Even when they touch a side effect with a 10-foot pole like they do with Randy's depression, they play it off as a joke. And on top of that, just a lame one. Randy talks about how he wants everything less, but his pee-pee still works. Yet he can't shake the feeling of something being terribly wrong. The more time he spends with the Ozempic moms, the more wrong it feels. Going back to when they were stealing the truck, the moms curb stomp the driver of the semaglutide truck when they've hijacked it, and then, Randy drives it over the edge. He steals the truck, he drives off. The moms chase him with trucks and guns, and then the boys are now going out and looking for the shipment. This is when they run into Randy. At this point, the cereal mascots also decide to join the party. Now it's a three-way fight. You got the Ozempic moms who want to steal the shipment, the cereal mascots that want to destroy it, and the boys who want to get their compounding pharmacy back on track. Because it's South Park, the boys win, they take the truck back to their pharmacy, and they open it to find the insurance guy from earlier. It seems like a frustrating conclusion, but then the boys get everyone in school to agree that they're just not gonna make fun of fat people anymore. Now, Cartman being Cartman, he immediately abuses this act of kindness going on and just starts insulting everybody, proving that he doesn't even care about his health. He just wanted a license to be a sociopath, bigger than he already was, which kind of undercuts the entire message of the special, but that's small potatoes. My biggest criticism of the end of Obesity special is the overwhelmingly positive portrayal of weight loss drugs. If you are morbidly obese or diabetic, yes, they are worth it, absolutely. If you're only slightly overweight, however, the value proposition is a bit shaky. But Matt and Trey don't bother with balance. They just fanboyed all over the drugs. If Ozempic marketing department had made the special, you wouldn't notice the difference. Now, while we've gone over some of the other side effects of it all, the final and the biggest side effect remains completely unaddressed. You will gain back all the weight you lost. It's the same problem with fat camps, crash diets, and even TV shows like The Biggest Loser. Any intervention that makes you eat less or move more is going to make you lose weight. In fact, a Scottish guy lost 276 pounds in the 1960s just by not eating anything for 382 days. Don't try this at home though. This guy weighed 456 pounds. He had enough spare body fat to last over a year without food. You probably don't. If you're an average person, at best you're going to make it 30 days without food before your fat reserves run out. Your body's then going to start to cannibalize itself, and then finally you die. This is why weight loss drugs are not special. They do the exact same thing that fat camps, TV shows, and extreme diets have done for decades. They make you eat less. While that will help you lose weight, the reason you get fat in the first place is because you have bad habits. If those habits don't change, you're just going to regain all that weight back that you're losing. Contestants on The Biggest Loser regain about 70% of the weight they've lost once they've left the show. It's the same issue with weight loss drugs. Once people stop using Ozempic, they regain all the weight they lost in just a couple of months. Ozempic is by no means a silver bullet. It might seem fancier and a bit more expensive, but it comes down to the same old rebound problem. This, more than anything, proves that there's really no shortcut to maintaining a healthy weight. Anybody can lose weight. The exact method doesn't really matter as long as they're not too extreme. The real challenge here is just keeping that weight off. And where keeping the weight off is concerned, our old friend diet and exercise are the only game in town. This is why quick weight loss methods are all scams. They only work in the short term and fail in the long term. The best way to lose the weight and keep it off is to make a lifestyle adjustment. I had to learn that lesson the hard way. If you don't fix your diet, you will start packing on the pounds as soon as you get off Ozempic or whatever drug of choice you're using. And once you feel fat again, it's back to Big Pharma for another shot at $1,200 a pop. But perhaps that was the plan all along.